A man who tried to betray the Mafia ended up getting hit with a literal truckload of bricks. This man was a low-level member of the Genovese crime family in New York City. And if you didn't know, it's one of the 5 families of the Mafia in the U.S. His name was Michael Franzese, and he was once a millionaire. But the FBI had been keeping tabs on him for years. They wanted him locked up because he was always out there robbing banks. They couldn't get enough evidence on him to charge him. That all changed when an informant came forward claiming that Michael had planned to rob a grocery store with him. The police had enough evidence now to arrest Michael and take him down. But then something unexpected happened. Michael turned into the biggest rat in the history of the Mafia. He agreed to testify against his fellow mobsters and tell them everything he knew. It started off slow. He helped bring down a few loan sharks, but then he began to go after the big fish. One of the people he testified against was a boss named Anthony Fat Tony Salerno. After hearing Michael's testimony, the jury took less than an hour to find Fat Tony guilty. But that wasn't the only good news. Michael had testified against other Mafia bosses too, and they had all been found guilty. So it seemed like this guy was a legit hero who brought down the entire Mafia, right? Well, not quite. See, Michael had secretly recorded hundreds of conversations with his fellow mobsters while he was still a part of their organization. Now, thanks to his testimony and the recordings, more than 100 mobsters were arrested. That included several captains and a whopping 28 underbosses. But when all was said and done, Michael received a sentence of only 10 years in prison. The Mafia families were losing hundreds of members every year due to this rat. To say that the Mafia was angry was an understatement. When Michael got out of prison, he thought he'd be safe with the FBI protecting him. But he soon found out he was wrong. A couple of weeks after being released, Michael was driving home from a grocery store, when suddenly a man ran out into the road and jumped onto his hood. Then the man screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm gonna kill you." Michael looked around and saw that there were a bunch of cars behind him honking their horns. He tried to drive away, but the man wouldn't let him. He stayed on the hood of the car and continued screaming, "You're a dead man, you son of a B-word." This went on for about 2 blocks before the guy finally jumped off the hood and disappeared into the crowd. Michael was shaken by this, but he assumed it was just some random guy who was having a psychotic episode or something. However, the threats kept coming. Soon he was receiving phone calls with people on the other end threatening to kill him. To make matters worse, the FBI wasn't doing anything about it. They told Michael that he just needed to toughen up and deal with it himself. Apparently, they didn't have enough evidence to figure out who was making the threats. Honestly, who could blame them? How could they possibly know who was behind all this? It's not like there were little pieces of paper attached to the guy saying, "Hi, I'm the guy trying to kill you." But Michael didn't want to just sit back and do nothing. He wanted revenge. He hired a private investigator, and together they managed to track down who was responsible for the threats. His name was Joseph Mass, and he was the brother of one of Michael's former partners in crime. Apparently, Joseph had been furious when Michael turned into a rat and gave up his brother and the rest of their crew. He felt that Michael had betrayed their whole family and he wanted revenge. And it wasn't just empty threats. Joseph had already tried to kill Michael 3 times, but he failed each time. So now Michael decided it was time to play dirty. He offered Joseph a deal where he would pay him $25,000 to murder someone else. This way, Joseph could get his revenge on the Mafia without actually putting himself in danger. But then the police got involved and arrested Joseph for planning a murder. That didn't sit well with Michael. He didn't like rats, so he figured he might as well take care of Joseph himself. He hired a hitman and paid him $10,000 to take Joseph out. But the hitman turned out to be a rat himself. The police found out about the hit, and they decided to use it to bring down Michael. They arrested him and charged him with hiring a hitman. All of this should have been the end of it. The police had taken down yet another Mafia member, and nobody got hurt in the process. But somehow this story gets even crazier. At first, Michael tried to defend himself in court, but he soon realized he was in too deep. He had made so many enemies in the Mafia that if he didn't cooperate with the police, he wouldn't make it out alive. So Michael once again turned into a rat and testified against his fellow mobsters. But this time, things were different. He wasn't just giving up random guys he barely knew. He was giving up some of the most powerful crime bosses in the country, guys who had never been touched by the police before. It turns out that Michael had secretly recorded over 1,000 conversations, while he a part of the Mafia. Thanks to these recordings, along with Michael's testimony, 12 crime bosses were convicted and sent to prison. These weren't small fish either. We're talking about some of the most ruthless killers in the country, guys who were responsible for dozens of murders. And how did Michael get for all this? Well, surprisingly, he didn't. You see, the judge wasn't feeling too generous that day. He sentenced Michael to 100 years in prison. Some sources say that the judge did this on purpose. He wanted to keep Michael alive until every last Mafia boss he testified against died in prison. That way, no one could ever get revenge on him. Others say the judge was just an idiot who didn't realize that sending Michael to prison for 100 years would make him a martyr for the Mafia. Either way, Michael's rotting in prison right now. And if he makes it out alive, he'll probably be too old to care. So what's the lesson here? If you're going to turn into a rat, make sure you don't get caught. Now, check out the real reason the Mafia doesn't kill rats anymore, or watch this video instead.